Hello and welcome to the Agency Download podcast, where we have real conversations about the advertising and marketing industry. I'm your host, James Williams, and today I'm joined by Ellis Verdi, co-founder of DeVito Verde, one of advertising's most acclaimed agencies, named Best Agency in the US 6 times. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh boy, I'm looking forward to this. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. We appreciate you. So, would love to really dive into. I think you have an incredible story how you started your agency. I'm always fascinated by entrepreneurs and their journey to entrepreneurship and how they got started. Could you share with us kind of what led you to starting at DeVito Verde?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, it's about 38 years old. So this is we're speaking about a while ago. And when we started, personally, I didn't know what profession I wanted to be in. So I had like 7 jobs my first year out of school. And I ended up in a law firm. I looked around. I said, I just can't do this. So I decided to keep going, and I ended up in an agency, and I just loved the environment, and everything about it was exciting. And I went into the normal route. I went to gray advertising I went to the client side, Pepsi-Cola company, and I got a lot of learning on the client side, but also on big agencies. And I just loved the creative product. I loved it so much. I went to school to try to see if I could do a little bit of it, and I learned a lot there. But generally speaking, I really loved the creative product. And I didn't see it in some of the environments I was working in. I just didn't see it to the point where it was, it was okay. It was gray was kind of mediocre at the time. And so it didn't excite me, but I was so passionate about it. So I said, I could do this myself. I don't know where that came from, out of stupidity maybe, because in reality, I think you have to be just a little stupid to do this, or at least start any business, right? You have to be a little bit naive
A
and
little
stupid
delusional.
work,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
little bit naive, and that kind of gives you the energy and desire. And I wanted to prove to everyone that there's a better way of doing this, both being very strategic and highly creative, and coming up with a great work product that really works. We're just, I guess an agency startup has a bit of planning, but a lot more luck potentially. I mean, I'm not sure what the percentages are, but we just went in, my partner and I, to do really unbelievable work that was going to reveal some truth, which tends to rub people sometimes in a rub them the wrong way, maybe, or kind of, irk them. But we're just revealing truth. And in this case, we started with an advertiser called Daffy's, and we did a great ad, which is a straight jacket. If you're paying over $100 for a dress shirt, maybe we suggest a jacket to go with it. And we showed a straight jacket. The Alliance for the Mentally Ill, one of the strongest lobbying groups in the U.S., was so upset about it, and they started demonstrating in the streets of New York. They had our pictures of our faces on placards. Um, they appeared in front of the stores in the streets of New York, because a lot of our work was really in out of home, so it was in New York. It was in the streets of New York. So there was also a lawsuit. They tried to sue us that we were defaming people who were mentally ill. In any case, all of this, and this is where the luck part is. All of this comes to, brought a huge amount of attention to, well, who are these guys? Where'd they come from? What are they doing? How can they cause such controversy with that one ad? And then further, they went to the Obie Awards that year, which is every agency in the United States at that time would go to the big Obie Awards, and there they were demonstrating DeVito Verde in front of the awards. After that, every agency pretty much knew about us instantly. That was the one thing we did, but then we didn't stop. And I think that's the rest of the story. Is we learned so much from that experience and a few others. We believed that we had kind of a way to go to market that was the strongest way possible. And it's kind of lived and breathed as it is our DNA for years.
Yeah. You really took on the no publicity is bad publicity. You took it and that was your launch pad essentially to getting awareness. You really built your own awareness for the brand and that specific
It
advertising initiative and your
Yeah.
agency at the same time.
Yeah. I have to say that it really helped the business immensely. The expansion of Daffy's as a result of that first effort, and all the other, I mean, there was a lot of creative like that was pretty outrageous in some ways. And outrageous is kind of a bad word, but smart, but strong.
Absolutely. Could you walk us through like what is your approach to the creative process? A lot of the creative agencies talk about this creative process they have to go through. And you brought up something, and this is really a lot of stuff that's conveyed throughout your work, a lot of your content is the truth in advertising. Could you walk us through like what's the creative process of how do you get to the truth in advertising?
Okay. So I'm going to just say this. It isn't just the truth in advertising, it's revealing some degree of truth.
Mm,
And there's a little bit of a difference here, but it's an important one. It's not like we're looking, like we're like legal people looking for the truth in the matter. It's not that kind of thing. It's really what can we do to reveal truth that would get people's attention? And the way you can think about it is if you were in a comedy show, if you're watching a comedy show, I give this example now and then, and you're watching somebody who's making you laugh, and you kind of look at that person and you say, what's happening? Why are you laughing? Is because something that you go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. That's truthful.
yeah.
Because something in the back of your mind is now going to the front of your mind and making you sort of engage with this person. And it's an effect that doesn't just happen just for humor. It happens for, very serious matters too, which is, oh yeah, that's true. That does make sense. You open up a condom on TV, first time it ever was opened up on TV, and we say it's easier than putting on a diaper. There's absolute truth in that. And I'm revealing it. And so by revealing it, I get your attention, recall something. It sits in your memory, just like a joke would. It sits in your memory and it becomes sort of your impetus over time to purchase a particular brand or a particular item.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just something that really resonates instinctually or at a deeper level, or something that people haven't thought of before that really brings the forefront of that message to their mind. And I think that's what creates really good just advertising and marketing is when you can resonate on a deeper level with your consumer.
Also, in that regard, it's good that you're making the consumer work just a little bit. Working too much, they're going to be turned off and they'll walk away. But when they get more invested when they're working at trying to get that little bit of clarity, they get it, it becomes what we call a hit. We call it a hit when you get a reaction, and that becomes recall for the advertisement of for the message. But generally speaking, it's good for, and where you could really see that you need to involve the consumer to some extent or the viewer, because if you just tell them like, 20% off, okay, I get it. But if you involve them a little bit more, it sits with them because they figured it out a little bit, right? They figured out that joke. They get that. They get they give themselves where it really works is in radio, if you think
Mm,
about it. Radio is sort of a different medium because you use it's kind of theater of your mind. You're listening to the radio commercial and this visual material is going through your mind if it's a good commercial. And by doing that, you're taking ownership of the message to some extent. And that is a psychological or philosophical view that we have about the best work out there. And we say the stronger the hit, the better the ad.
yeah. Could you give us some examples? Like, what were some of your favorite hits over the years that you guys developed and created?
Boy, I gave you the one that I really like. I mean, we showed a baseball for a hospital. This is a serious ad, and we visualized the stitches. You have to kind of see the work, but you see the stitches missing, and it just says minimally invasive sports surgery. So it's a very quick outdoor board that I like a lot. There is oh boy, there's so many. There's really a lot of this. Really is a lot. Almost every category of business. And then when you look at it, you'll see now that the viewer knows what to look for, they'll see the hit all the time. And they will also, if they're smart in their own work, if they're doing work creatively or otherwise, they will look to manage the hardest hit they can. Make that reaction like, oh my God, did you see that? Did you just see what they did over there? And I've seen it for other people too. It's not just DeVito Verde doing this, but I think we've kind of bottled it a little bit more than most.
Yeah, it sounds like you've really built a culture and a focus on your creative process is leading towards that.
Yes, and I would say it works everywhere. So it works in a YouTube video, certainly a longer length video. It works in shorter length. It really works in shorter length. Before 15-second commercials became something of a thing because of the, skippability, whatever it is, whatever reason you give it, shorter length commercials seem to have a run recently in the past few years. Before that, we were doing that almost all the time. We have the best 15-second reel early on. And the reason for that is because we wanted to get to the hit quicker.
Mm,
If you do a little bit of a setup and you get to a strong hit right away, that condom I just mentioned is 15-second commercial. You get it right away. It's a boom, I got it. And that's what's required. Sometimes a 30 can be too long. When you get a little more serious, a 30 and even a 60 can make a difference, and you might need it in order to get to that hit. Sometimes the hit is a little slower to evolve. Sometimes it's very quick, but sometimes it requires a slower sort of. We're doing a commercial right now that is a slower evolution of that thought process, and it's very serious. Send it to you.
interesting. Love to see it. We'll see that off fire. So we're kind of in this. There's always this technological landscape we're always dealing with as advertisers and marketers. Could you speak a bit to? Because I think that the principle of like getting to the truth or what you call the hit is an underlying principles that marketers and advertisers should always focus on trying to get to. That's going to resonate and connect with the consumer they're advertising to. But we live in this hyper overly done content everywhere. You feel like you have to be on 5 different platforms, and there's such a huge volume of demand of content just to stay relevant, I think a lot of brands feel. Is how do you apply kind of that maybe that principle, or have you seen that principle being
Yes.
applied to the kind of modern technology landscape where we no longer can just run a spot on TV and radio, but you have to be all over the internet and all these different.
So it's a very good question because people think that this is generic to advertising of any sort, and that's what I want to explain. There is a basic tenet that we have to deliver. The tenets of great advertising. Okay, there's tenets. Where does that come from? One of these things is, as I just described, is revealing truth, but there are other ones. And they come from years and years of doing advertising in all kinds of ways. It doesn't matter which way, and even recently. And you will see that the best work, most effective work, best work will always have something that's not just the immediate offer, let's say, but it will have an underlying tone that makes the brand more valuable. And so what we're talking about is, I'll give you another tenet. Another tenet for great work is staying close to a product, right?
Mm,
You don't want to be if you're totally far away in a different, if you're not close to the benefit or the product itself, as close as you don't have to be like right on it, like front and center, but you have to be about it. If you go too far away, it's content of the weakest selling version. It gets less and less, the content gets less and less powerful in terms of creating a result. And the reason for that is really simple. We're in the advertising business. We have to, on some level, do two things. We have to communicate something about the product or benefit. It could be something theatrical. It could be an image thing, like a fashion product or a booze product. It could be an image thing. It could be anything. But we have to communicate something about what we're offering because you want people to take some action at some point against that. So in order to do that, there are these tenets that are involved with advertising 101 that is absolutely viable in a banner. It's viable on YouTube. It's viable anywhere. It's just the two things are entertain, but also tell me about what you want me, sell me. You're selling me something on some level. On some level. Doesn't have to be like hard sell, but you're selling me something. So those two things have to work at max. You can't have one without the other, so they both need to be in there. And that's a basic tenet of some of the best work that I've seen on the internet and in the shows, and usually works because we've seen it work.
Yeah, that's so interesting 'cause we always hear like the splits, and I live in the paid advertising world, so we have to deal with the clients that either want awareness, they want more reach, more frequency, more people to see our brand, and then we work with direct response marketers who are, we only want sales, we just care about the bottom line, and that's it. But the way you're explaining it, and I think more brands need to do this, is that you need the alignment of both, really. You need the brand association that your brand has an elevated or an association with higher value that consumers should be attracted to. But they also need that action oriented of all
Absolutely.
brands want the consumer to do something. But how do you connect that and get that all work together in a
So
message to drive some type
so
of action?
so that's a great question for the times today. I mean, for the times we're living in today. And the reason I say that is because you're right. The challenge is very much one or the other, not both. By the way, the science is that some of the best down funnel works best when there's a strong up funnel
100%.
in support. So these nobody would disagree that on some level, in most cases, you need some awareness, some brand association, some trust in what you're about to, endeavor in or do or buy. And you have to have some level of trust. And then when someone says, oh, by the way, you should go now because, what for whatever reason, the message is strong. So the connective tissue is not about, and this is important, is not about doing all of it in one commercial or one ad.
Mhm.
It's about a plan that you create over the course of time, right? Because, for example, we did this test where we did a lot of volume, a high volume of awareness, and then we took we changed the percentage very much towards down funnel right afterwards. So, because we knew we needed that awareness, it hit a certain number, and then we moved dollars into, so that was a transition, and we knew that over time we would affect, and it worked. It can affect a better end result. That's only one example. But the most important thing is you almost have to say to yourself that it's better to have 10 different messages said once as opposed to one message sent 10 times. If that one message, everything packed into something that has both a top of funnel, bottom of funnel, call to action, QR code, all that. If you push it too close to doing one thing, even though you're going to repeat it 10 times, it's still not good enough. So it's much better to create a plan over time. Sometimes it's a 3-year plan. It doesn't have to be a 1 or 2 year plan. It can be a long-term plan, or it could be a 6 month. I just gave you an example of a 5-month plan. But there are plans that need to occur, which say that what we want to do is find a place for each message that's right for that message. And we also want to think about the rotation, and the timeline is becoming more and more important. We don't expect this to all work perfectly right away. And the problem you have is people are so like, there's a quarterly report coming up in the public company, and they
Need
say,
results
I
now.
don't care what it takes. I got to get my numbers up. There are going to be times like that. And people will learn that those times for those kind of people, fear to some extent is really working against them because they just could wait a little bit longer and get a far greater result. It's not like I'm making this up because of a belief system. It's literally what the science shows. There's too much data out there. Companies like S1, I don't know if you know these companies, but they're companies that have done a lot of research that prove that you need some emotional connection, some trusting connection before you can actually get people to do some kind of action in most cases. I wouldn't say it's 100% of the cases, but every case is different and your plans are very different. But it's most of the cases you need to find a way to create a timeline where the different messages are working for you in different ways because they belong to the media in which the message is being written. It's not forcing 6 points in one, and therefore you can have a number of different things. By the way, whenever I say that to somebody, you can have 10 different things said once as opposed to one thing said 10. But they say, well, it's not continuous. It's not connected. It's not, what do you, and that's just not the case because you'll have visual connection. You might have a tagline that's connecting it. And the most important thing is you'll have a voice.
Mm.
The voice is how you say what you want to say, And that doesn't change no matter where it goes. So creating a voice becomes a point of continuity very often in today's market, as opposed to creating an ad with a lot of information.
Mm, yeah, and that makes that so many different things to feed off of that, but I think the biggest thing is really how big is the behavioral change that you're trying to influence, and that really changes the lifespan of how long it takes, whether that's like a 6-month plan, right? Because like buying a T-shirt on a retail site is much different than purchasing a car, or you've worked with a lot of like social change campaigns of a behavioral social change perspective of looking at a stigma of something. All
So
of those things have a far different impact on what type of message has to be driven, and then what type of action is asked of the
and I would say that one of the biggest challenges in that conversation, which I think comes out a lot, is the bifurcation of retail and reputation.
Mhm.
So they both have to be there. We nobody's going to argue that the job of all of what you do is to get sales results. I mean, there is no question. We're all on the same page all the time, every day of the week. But to get the sales results, sometimes it requires this much reputation and this much retail action. Sometimes it's the reverse. Sometimes it's over time. You just need to be flexible with the variables that are involved in the retail versus reputation balancing act. And the end result is always going to be a balance. It's not going to be one or the other. It's probably going to be some degree of balance. And the balance doesn't have to be in the same medium. It could be across a number of different touch points. Could be in a store versus something that's outside a store if it's a store involved. And that's the nature of it. I mean, you can think of a product, you want to sell a t-shirt, a particular brand of t-shirt. I want that brand to be cool. So I want to maybe have seen some social media, around how cool it is. And sometimes, by the way, the minute you start to advertise, Supreme it was a cultural product. It was born out of a cultural behavior, movement. The minute it started to get too much advertising, too mainstream, it started to have a challenge. So sometimes it's not just about, put the ads out there and get the results. Sometimes it's a lot of much more subtle activity in the process. But even in that case, someone had the sense that that's kind of a cool brand before they needed a t-shirt for real that morning, to go to work in or whatever. It's not just a technical need. It's also, the brand that's associated with it. And there's plenty of examples of that balancing act. And there's going to be stuff that's more down funnel than up funnel. But again, I would say keep the discussion open to try to create the right balance. And most of the time, the balance out of fear is going to be give me those sales right away. And that's going to be probably a problem for you.
Yeah, more often than not. Yeah, I think that makes me really think a lot too of we're in this like AI revolution, and everybody's saying like AI can do everything. But I still firmly believe that for based on everything you just explained and talked about, of like you have to know what balance of brand message versus direct response or lower funnel, and you still need a smart, savvy marketing, branding, advertising strategist to point all of the machines in the right direction, and you get a leverage from AIs that they can do more. They can optimize our ad campaigns much faster now. They can help create more content. They can help improve systems and processes, but they do not have perspective of what the brand needs from a strategic standpoint and how that differentiates
True.
from other brands.
True, true, true. I think that the key thing to realize, as we see it, because we work with AI in a number of different ways, is the most important thing that you have to protect against AI is the generation of an idea, or the
Mm,
generation of an idea as it relates to any of the activity in which you're doing, because it cannot do that comfortably. It could give you some options. It's given us some things to think about, but it isn't going to give you the idea. It's not going to give you an idea on a media side as much either. It's just not going to be able to, if I say we did an ad on a bus shelter where people were running the marathon, and it was about somebody who ran the marathon who just got over some significant surgery, and all along the marathon are these bus shelters saying he's gonna finish the marathon. That's an idea. That's not gonna be generated. The media side of that won't be generated by AI, and the creative side won't be generated by AI, and the putting it up together won't be generated by AI. AI could help you in getting there, though. So it helps us a lot also in getting there. So, for example, and not getting to that example, but getting to help us, for example, in video production. It is a definite help. We've changed staffing, we've changed the modeling in which we go to market because it provides such great assistance. There's a commercial we just did for Legal Seafoods. It's a commercial about not Legal Seafoods. It's Rogers Fish Co., which is the old. Anyway, he delivers fish, fresh fish, to your door that you're going to eat, right? But we want to make it clear that it comes fresh. Obviously, very important if you're ordering fish. So we have a truck that comes up to someone's house, delivers the fish. The woman comes out of the door, and all of a sudden, seagulls come from all over and attack the house. Now, we're making a point, of course, that it's so fresh that seagulls want to eat the fresh fish. It's a great visual. It would have cost us $1 million to shoot that. And it would have probably taken all kinds of equipment, time, post production. We did it in about an hour and a half. So, and it looks great and it's effective. So, you can't argue with the power of AI.
Yep.
That's one
That you
small example. There are plenty of other examples on the power of AI, but the idea for that had to come first.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I think is that the AI is helping people do tasks, the task-oriented stuff, faster. The editing, the video production, whatever that task is. But the strategic thinking, the ideation, all of that still has to come from an individual. And I think that's the big battle and transition is that people who are just in the individual task-oriented stuff that it can be automated much quicker and faster through AI is going out. And then I think the other benefit is that advertisers can do more for less, right? You can do what you would have cost you $1 million production. You can now create in about 2 hours
For
with
no
a
money.
much lower video,
Yeah, pretty much no money except for some time that we put into it.
which then allows you to probably put that money towards reaching more people, which
You
is a huge cost. So if you can keep your production costs lower, you can reach more people with a great piece of content that came from the idea of someone's mind that got implemented through AI. And I think that's the power, that's the balance. What do machines do well? What do humans do well?
And the challenge you have is that in the past few years, this is a little controversial. In the past few years, much of the creative people gave up their thought process to the people who run the machines. Because what happened was we were servicing the media. I hate to say this, but performance marketing didn't turn out to be the best marketing in the world. And even though some people rely on it. And the ROAS wasn't going up because we were spending more money. It was all kinds of issues. We all know about that. But here we are, and we had given up so much of our ability to manage that ideation to a process that, going through A/B testing. Don't worry, the machines will tell you exactly which ad works the best. And the platforms were promoting that for obvious reasons. Economically, it made a lot of sense to them. Even in the early days, Google Think used to publish all the time about how creativity is really not that important in the process. It is really a thing that was given up. And the reason we are where we are today in this business, in my opinion, is because the agencies gave that up to service the media
Mm,
because the economics were there, purely because of the economics. They're realizing that the short-term economics might have been there, but the long-term, not so much. New Balance, Nike, going back to moving more top funnel, all this other work that's being done to mixed media modeling and, incrementalism, all kinds of other testing and work that's being done has been done because we see that it's a loss not to think about the whole picture and trying to find a balance as opposed to just putting on. And of course, the more we just went along as agencies to give the business essentially to basically serve, we're servicing clients by making them familiar with how the platforms work. So we gave what the platforms were asking for, and the more we did that, we put ourselves a little bit out of business.
Absolutely.
Because Facebook now could tell you, well, we don't need those agencies anymore. We just run that through AI. You just give us your credit card, and we'll give you back some business.
Yeah.
I'm exaggerating a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, I have some opinions on that. That off of, but absolutely. So I started my career, and I feel very fortunate for this. The transition between kind of the old, I don't want to call it old, but the traditional way of media buying, which was linear, radio, out of home, all heavy use on the offline media. Working with those media buyers, they had a watchdog perspective and mindset that I think is lost today from your modern media buyer,
Yes,
because they were making sure the publishers delivered what they were supposed to. If there's issues, they got the make goods, and they really represented the brand to make sure they got the most out of the publishers. Now today, you're taught as a media buyer, go learn from the publishers. They'll tell you how to buy media, how to place ads, how to
that's
run the campaigns, all of that. And then what ends up happening is that really they're sales organizations just trying to get you to buy more dollars on their platform. And it's not always in the best interest of clients, where they'll serve ads to the wrong audience. They want you to keep things very broad so that they can decide where the ads are served so they can maximize their margin. All of these things are in effect, and you have to be mindful of as a marketer in today's media buying world. That I think creates a lot of opportunities and challenges for agencies to recognize. But your modern media buyer doesn't I don't think has that watchdog perspective of, I need to do what's best for my brand, not what the ad platform is telling me.
I think that's 100%. I couldn't say it better than that. That's 100%. We were built originally to be leaders and tell everyone, this is where you should go for this reason, and not be sort of servants to the platforms, which is what we ended up doing. And it is the agency's fault for doing that to some extent. I have to point the finger in the right direction. But a lot of public companies are chasing a lot of dollars, and we know that there's a huge involved, huge amount of dollars. There's also, in some cases, what I call a spread. There's a lot of other things that exists on the servicing of the platforms that allows them to meet financial goals. And I think that that's taken away from the clients, and exactly how you said it, which is that you are more of a steward of a brand, and therefore you had a different sort of degree of importance placed on what you're, you're really getting the income from the client. You're not, even though the income's coming from the media company and that relationship, it really ought to be that the client and the brand is really where the where you should pay attention, and you should be stewards and in good faith do what's right for the brand and be true leaders. As agent, the agencies over the years have been real leaders, the best
Yeah.
ones. They have told people, no, don't put your money there. Don't go there for these reasons. And even if those reasons are a little difficult, which they are sometimes, they're a little difficult. The client might say, I need sales tomorrow. Where are my numbers? Even when it's a little difficult, we were known to communicate a point of view that we felt was the right point of view, and not just acquiesce because of the dollars involved. That's my viewpoint. I know it's a little bit but I think it's turning around.
Mhm.
So I have another viewpoint. I don't know how, this is sensitive too, but the feeling I have is that everybody is that we just saw a large agency merger, right? We saw it. It was devastating to the industry because so many people got let go and so on. And in the old days, it used to be small agencies were creative and big agencies were not. That was the simplistic view of when I started the business on. But really, what's happened because of the platforms and the various other media activity is it's more like the small agencies are fast, a lot of content. They're promoting a lot of content, doing it quickly, a short term, kind of gimmicks very often to try to get attention. And they're not about creative necessarily, but the big agencies still hold on to some of the creativity that makes what I call the greatest tenets of creativity across the board. They still hold on to that philosophy. They still understand it. They're not, here on these small agencies, you get one post and you get a million likes, and all of a sudden you can start an agency.
Yeah.
They don't have knowledge of the tenets of great branding and to stand up for they don't know how to stand up for a client and for a client's interests. The large agencies, now that it's reconstructed, actually, it's going to be better, might actually be the better place in some respects. I hate to say that because I'm not a large agency in some respects, but I do see that the smaller agencies are not performing the way I think they should with supposed creative reputation. I think that's still, what's left in the big agencies might actually be better that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think they're going for a microwave approach instead of let's build a brand for the long term. They're just trying to activate fast. And yeah, I completely agree. Like the agency has to be the steward and the protector and the truth teller to the brand. It has to be because they're the intermediary. They're just trying to do what's best, and that's what my perspective has always been. Is like we have to do what's best regardless of whether or not something's working. That maybe we recommend it and it's not working out. We need to tell the truth, or what's the best place to put your marketing dollars, your advertising dollars? I think that has to be the point. And another thing I wanted to mention, because I think it's very topical, what you were explaining earlier, was if we put everything into performance marketing, our return on ad spend should go up. But it doesn't work, right? Then that never works for large advertisers. If you're a small advertiser and you have a small budget, you could probably make
Yeah,
it work. Like we're just going to run on meta
right.
ads and we need to just be bottom line. We need to
Exactly.
put $1 in and we need to get $3 back. Yes. But if you're a large brand, a large advertiser, this is what ends up happening is that I focus a lot on consumer trends and media trends. And what we look at oftentimes, the foundation to me of like media buying is where do people spend time? Where are people spending time determines where we navigate and try to reach them as brands. So what we realize though is that what we look at is that about 40% of online time is spent on what we call walled gardens. So it'd be like YouTube and TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, etc. And then 60% of time is spent with TV and radio, whether it's like streaming radio or terrestrial radio, driving out of home, like all the other placements where you can reach people. So 60% of time off of social media, 40% of time is spent on social media, but 80% of the dollars go to social media apps.
So
20% of budget goes to TV and radio, what we would all consider as more of our upper funnel awareness. So we have this huge imbalance over the last 10 years because everybody's just looked at the bottom line. Where am I getting immediate sales? Okay, I need to just push more dollars there and forget about we need to build a brand. We need to build reputation. We
and
need to
and
connect with the consumer
and
on a
I
deeper level.
so true. So true. I mean, I use the same stats. It's absolutely the case. But you have to say, why did this happen? A little bit. You kind of have to ask yourself. And for many years, the agency business and the agency people used to say, just trust me. Just trust me. I know what I'm doing. Just trust me. If everybody says, just trust me, the ones that have experience, that don't have experience, the ones that can show mediocre work and get away with it, and it was all trust me. When somebody came in and said, you can't listen to trust me anymore, I've got numbers to show you if something's going to work or not. That became like, oh my God. It wasn't just like, oh, that's interesting. It was like, oh my God, that's a shift. The
Yeah.
world has changed now.
Yep.
We don't have to listen to those agency trust me people. We can now, so to some extent, we didn't create as agencies direct tenets for understanding the best work. That was really important. There were small groups of people in teaching it in various schools and various other things, but that was very tight. It was small and it wasn't, and there were a few that were famous and that were really doing the right thing, but it wasn't accepted broadly by everyone. So you got into this position where you were kind of not telling the client that we had some degree of understanding of what's right from wrong and trust us. So it became like a revolution when somebody came in and said, I'm going to show you the numbers and it's either working or not working, even though it has tremendous weaknesses as you described. You get very disappointed when you start to double your spending and your ROAS is not doing the same. It happens every day,
Yep.
and it still happens.
Yep, it's still continuing happening, and I think it's gonna come from agencies that lead brands away from that microwave approach, needing the bottom line, but and also brands recognizing that we can't just focus on immediate direct sales, like, we have to build for long-term future. It's just long-term thinking, I think. It's the difference between short-term versus long-term. But how have you built this kind of culture internally? 'Cause it's like you've really been able to maintain the culture and the creative process and really focus on building the right advertising campaign, those tenants and principles. How have you been able to do that throughout the years?
I think I think what made it easy was that a few things. We started as an independent agency, and we remain an independent agency.
Mhm.
As an independent agency, we can operate without those pressures. We take risks that nobody would have ever allowed us to take if they owned us, for example. I have plenty of examples of that. I might say just because a creative product is not good enough, the client's not paying us that much money, but do 10 more because I don't like it. It's not good enough. And everybody will say, yeah, well, absolutely. We got to do better work. So the culture, the DNA has been since the beginning. First of all, as an independent agency, we have to show that the rest of the world, it's in us. The rest of the world doesn't know what they're doing. We know what we're doing. It's a mentality, right? And it's not exactly right, but it's a mentality. And you built an agency on that mentality. The same creative people are with us since the beginning, pretty much. So we all were built on this DNA. And the satisfaction is when you actually do that great piece of work and you get recognized for. We just did this thing for organ donation. I mean, it's all over the internet. People just love it. So it's a great satisfying, and it's very effective. That organization just ballooned as a result of the work. It gets its satisfaction from itself doing the things that we want to do and not what others kind of want us to do in the process. In the early days, also, if clients weren't right, we'd be happy to, show them the door or whatever. I don't think it sounds worse than it is, but there is a sensibility that we are an independent agency. We have our viewpoints. It's a bit of, if it's interesting to you, we're going to do business, and if it's not, we'll move on. It's really kind of that mentality and the very strong DNA. You know what else makes a strong DNA? You know how many agencies spend hours on internally trying to say, is that right? Is that wrong? Should we do this? We we're like second nature. We know exactly what's right. We know we don't have to talk to each other. We say, we go like that, and that's good enough for let's keep going. There's no arguments, there's no internal discussions. Everybody agrees. We know what's a winner and what's not.
Yeah, that's
That's what I'm
amazing.
talking about.
I mean, that all comes just from the top down. Like, we always talk about, like, the leaders, the top sets the tone, and since you guys were able to maintain ownership as an independent, you were able to set the tone, the atmosphere, the culture, and then everyone kind of falls in line alongside that.
They do, but
You
they
get all
also
on the
and
same mindset.
they learn that it's right. They learn themselves. I would say there's something to be said for this. My partner used to, taught at the School of Visual Arts,
Mhm.
and he used to hire people right out of school who were some of the best, freshest, innocent in some ways, but really fresh. And we still do that. So there is a sensibility that it's the idea that counts more than the years in the business. Right? So you have this sensibility that, and also we don't have a predisposition. A man could do a great ad for a woman's product.
Mhm.
A woman could do, vice versa. A young person for an older person. There
They
is
have always
no,
have a different perspective that can get to the good
there's
point of
always
that.
there's always a different perspective, and it's all valuable. And so you create that culture internally, and it sort of exists with that. Even if I don't show up one morning, the culture's there in
Yeah.
spades.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are you looking forward to over the next, like, couple years? Like, what keeps you motivated, engaged in the advertising marketing industry? Like, what do you kinda see
Well,
coming?
I wanna see us rebalance. I don't think our conversation kind of comes to that conclusion to some extent. We're off balance as an industry, and I'm hoping to get to a point where it's better balance, where the balance is more about what we talked about earlier. and I wanna see the industry to that point, but I also am very much excited as I was when I was many years ago, when I see a single idea that I just go nuts. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I just it's something that I can't resist. I immediately text it to everybody. I just saw an ad, somebody posted, I texted out to everybody. It's just a smart ad. It was in a bank, there's a pen that's attached usually with a
Little
link,
chain. Yeah.
and the line was something like, "Why don't banks trust their customers?" or something like. It's just, I don't know, it wasn't a blowaway thing. It wasn't like, "Oh my god," but when I see something that I say, "Somebody behind there has a fresh way of thinking," and and I get excited, and I think that's what started and sort of what's gonna end me too, which is sort of that excitement. Hopefully, there's enough of it that continues and the industry shifts a little bit more to a more balanced approach.
Yeah, I love that. I think, yeah, things that keep you excited about the industry really keeps everything going and moving the right direction. My last question for you is, if you give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that advice be?
It's a good question. I got a little more realistic as the years went on. I think that's typical, right? Younger people are more idealistic, and as you get older, more realistic. And I taught myself something over time. Of course, I know it all. And now I feel like the most important people that know stuff is really the client. And that doesn't mean I have to do exactly what they say to be right, but I give so much credence to what they are up against and the realities of that. Uh, at having that knowledge today has made me a far better manager in the agency business than I was, I think, earlier on. We used to get, we have stories. We used to immediately we didn't hear something right in a meeting, so we packed our bags and walked out. That kind of thing was really not something that's happened for many years since then. But that was something I would just tell my younger self that they may have a point, they may have something to say, and you may just be misreading it.
Absolutely. Perspective and understanding of others and being understand their position. What shoes are
Yes,
they in? What are their challenges that they
yes,
have to deal with, and seeing it
exactly.
from their perspective, I think is a great insight for business and then also personally as well. But awesome. Well, this was an absolute honor to have you on today. I appreciate all your time and sharing all your stories, your wisdom, and your insight. I've gotten personally just a ton out of this conversation. So I thank you. Where could people work? How can people work with you or connect with you? Anything that you want to plug or share?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can plug the website is fine, but I don't know if there's anything necessarily. I think people who want this kind of work will find it hopefully, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no worries. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.